We just want to thank Mike Cooper for his lovely speech he's just done. Before we start this tour, we just want to point out a few things. This is still a working garage, so I want you to all be very, very careful. There's plenty of obstacles around, so watch your footing. There's small walkways and some narrow rooms, so please be careful because it is dangerous. And if you want to take any photographs, please feel free to do any photographing that you want to. We'd also like just to thank Alvaro Greco and Dan as well for today, for allowing us to come into this building. As they own two of these cars that are in this showroom. One is a 968 and a very special 959, which is a very, very rare car. Dan races the Porsche and very successful. You'll see his trophies at the back of the showroom. So we'd just like to carry on the tour. So if you all like to just have a look at the far entrance, there's a door, a blue door that you can see there, which will tell you a little bit more about that door at the far entrance. So just take a note of that far blue door. If you would like to come into this part of the old workshop, and I just want to introduce myself. I'm Chris Dawson. I used to be the service advisor at John Cooper's, worked with Michael and John for 25 years. My wife and myself, we've done quite a few reunion dinners and everything else for everybody. We keep it all together. We're very lucky that we've got these two cars, so we keep in touch with as many people as we can. And I'd introduce you to my ex-works manager, which is Tony Franks.
Hello everybody. I used to work with Chris for many years. It's not working, that one, is it? Hello everybody. I used to work for John Cooper for 26 years, and we spent a lot of time in the workshop we used to run the workshop for John. We built a lot of race cars and mini racers and conversion kits all over the UK, and I was involved with a lot of the development work that you will now drive today, so it was good times. But this is just a part today of the heritage which went with John all those years ago. As you know, this is a very special building because a lot of cars came from here, and as I say, unfortunately I was too young then, so I missed it, but I'd have loved to have been here in those days as well. Charles Cooper, I think we're going to go over obviously some of what Michael said earlier about Charles Cooper buying this plot of land many years ago in 1934, and he used to live down the road in a flat in Ewell Road, 243. There used to be a red, there is a red transport wheel building, and Charles then got permission to build a small garage on this site, which was rather like rickety. I think there's some pictures somewhere for it that Dave's got there. That was how it was originally, which is what John built, Charles built in the early days. A little bit different now. He then built that garage there, which was then he was just doing repairs and service work on when he first made it for Vauxhall, Ford and Rover cars, or Austin cars as it was then, Austin 7s. And so that's where it all started before we got onto the idea of racing cars.
So Charles Cooper, with that small garage there, he used to keep, as Michael said earlier, he had a small light aircraft, which he kept in in one of the workshops there. This was called a Flying Flea. Now that Flying Flea had an Austin 7 engine, but the engine was really too heavy and not enough power. Even though that Charles did fly it a couple of times, John obviously was about 12 years old then, and Charles decided to take that aircraft engine out, and he placed it in Stephen Woodrow's Austin 7 there, and this was called a T1, which was the first plaque ever fitted to one of the Coopers. Now this was the Cooper's very, very first car that was road legal. This car, Charles Cooper drove down to Brooklands, and John decided that he was going to drive that car round the Brooklands track. Got caught by the marshals and ticked off quite badly for it. But he'd always say that at least I got one lap of the Brooklands track. And I'd just like to say thank you to Steve Woodrow for bringing this car down today. Thank you again.
The original workshop here was a very small, as you see on the picture there. He's going to go back to it in a minute. But a very, as I say, small building to start with a corrugated tin roof, which was rather dark and dingy. And they still produced, obviously, quite a few good cars in there. But Charles always used to say that if you want more light, turn your welding torches on, because it would make them work quicker and they could see what they were doing. And he would not pay much for his electricity in those days as well, so he was a very shrewd man even then, in those days. He didn't want to part with much.
This other car here is a Cooper Bobtail T39, which is a 1500c Coventry Climax engine, which belongs to Robert Searles. This car was built in 1955 and designed by the chief engineer designer, which we'll see that his room later, Owen Maddox. Thank you very much, Robert, for bringing that as well.
Yeah, what a lovely car that is, isn't it? Imagine going down the road in that. Cooper's put together their first race cars, Cooper 500s. They used to get the front end of smashed up Fiat Tepelinos and use the front axles and things out of there. And then with his mate Eric Brandon, they got Jap motorcycle engines and put that into the cars. And the first two cars were produced, the T2 and the T3, were the first cars that they came out of Cooper Car Company. And Cooper Car Company was formed in 1947 and obviously ran all the way through the 60s with that name. It was, as I say, another historic. They used to race that car. The first two cars went to Prescott Hill Climb in those two cars, and obviously that's when they all started to race. And I thought, what a good idea.
As Tony says, that was a good idea because that's when they started building these little 500s and went on from there. As you've probably seen on YouTube or other internet connections, you probably know that John used to drive from the front here up and down the Kingston bypass or the A3 there, and one of those days John was driving down the A3 and coming back here after testing, and on the passing him the other way was a policeman on a motorbike. So suddenly John sort of noticed he was trying to turn his bike round, so John got back here as quickly as he could, and as he got back here there was a couple of mechanics still standing outside waiting for his return. He shouted out, "Boys, get back into the workshop, quick!" And as they got into the workshop, they closed the doors behind them and it all hid down behind the benches. By the time the motorbike arrived, he was looking through the doors and couldn't see any of them. That was another escape for John.
As I was saying earlier about the corrugated roof on the garage, this photo here, which she hasn't got. Showing the Cooper staff outside the garage, which is with another one of their project cars, which is a Streamliner. Now this car they put together because everybody was trying to break the world speed record in these cars, so they built this car and went to America with it to do the record. But unfortunately, I don't know how well it did. But it was just another one of the projects that everybody got involved with, and off they went. I mean, what a way to go racing! Just let's build a car and take it to America, see if we can break the land speed record. Incredible. And then, as you can see on the wall, on the picture, there's a gauge here. Now Chris is going to try and lift it. That's the original tyre gauge from there. We've still got it. Wow. And that used to be outside on the wall. It was found by this. The gauge obviously was taken off the wall by one of the previous owners, Roger Florio, and he kept it for some other reason. It didn't get chucked away like most things do. And Roger used to have the Mini garage, which was down the road, with the Mini on the wall. It looks like the front end of a Mini, and obviously that stayed there for a long time as well. But yeah, what an incredible car, to say. I wish we knew more about it. It's one of those that we don't know.
John Cooper was racing as well. He carried on racing until one great friend of his passed him on several occasions, and John was getting a little bit cheesed off with that. And his name was Mike Hawthorne, that drove one of the Cooper Bristols, and then went on to be the very first F1 champion. Another person that obviously came into this premises. And after that, John never raced again because he decided that engineering was the best way forward.
One of the first people to, when they started producing the 500 Cooper 500s, one of the first people who came past the workshop here was Bernie Eccleston, as Mike said, outside, and he went on obviously to have fun in a Cooper 500, but John always used to say he never paid me for that car. And what a surprise for a car salesman. And the second person to walk past or come along there was Sterling Moss. We all know what happened to when he started racing. He just went on and on and on and broke every record there was and just carried on racing, and he started in the 500. So that was another coup for the Cooper cars. Quick story about Sterling Moss though. He used to obviously come and pick his car up here, get it serviced here, but he always used to come back here to see how things were going and have a competition with the mechanics in the workshop doing press-ups. And would you believe he always won? It was a true story of that. He used to come back in here and how many press-ups can we do today, boys? Yeah, another little bit of information about it.
So I mentioned to you roughly about the door at the back of the workshop. I'm doing my Cooper here. Yeah. Yeah, so I mentioned to you about that door at the back of the workshop. Now, Jack came over from Australia and started off, his first job was a technician or a mechanic. Yes. So when he came over and they gave him a job because he did know he had been racing in Australia and doing well, and he'd been racing one of these as well, and obviously they couldn't offer him a job because Roy Salvadori was racing at the time. I think it was about 1957. So they said, we're giving you a job as a mechanic and we'll go from there. Well, when Jack came, he had nowhere to live, so he bought a caravan, and there's a pub down the road here the Royal Oak. The Royal Oak pub down the road had a big car park, and in that car park at the back there, Jack kept his caravan, and between the garage and here is a small stream, and where that stream is, there's a small bridge, and that bridge is where Jack used to come into the back of the garage, in through that door at the back, and into work. And Charles Cooper also used to go on there and feed the ducks along that little stream. So that's another little true story that, you know, I've spoken to the technicians and the mechanics here over the years and told me about Jack coming in.
Yeah, as you know, Jack was very talented, as he's just said there, and he was helping John to develop the Formula One cars, and he was so good at it, and the testing went so well that that's when they offered him a job to drive with none other than Roy Salvadori, who was a local man then, and Roy Salvadori later became the actual team manager. But those two then went on, as you know, to win a lot of records and break a lot of people's hearts.
Jack, obviously working in the workshop, then became #1 driver. They gave him a job, and he knew a very talented man from New Zealand, his name being the only one, Bruce McLaren. When Bruce McLaren came over and was given a job, Charles and John were out there in the workshop, and he said, "Where's my car?" So John and Charles said, "If you have a look over there in the corner, there was a chassis, an engine, and parts in a pile. So if you want to race for us, you're going to have to build your own car." So that's how Bruce started off, and as you know, how successful both of them were.
And how could you better wish for a better team than have the young Jack Brabham and Bruce McLaren in? What a team to have to go start doing your Formula One racing team. Yeah, amazing.
Can I just borrow another picture? And this picture here that David was holding up earlier is showing outside this window both Jack and Bruce standing on the front there. So how lucky, you know, was Cooper's to have a team like that. So it was always very cold in here, and Charles obviously, he always kept the hand on the purse strings. He never liked spending out much money, but the chaps during the winter said it used to get so cold in here. In the workshop here, and Charles walked out of his office and came down from upstairs and said, "What's the matter, boys? What are you moaning about?" He said, "Well," they all said, "Well, it's so cold in here, Charles." So Charles walked out into the centre of the workshop and stuck a paraffin heater in the middle of the workshop and said, "Boys, if you want central heating, you've got it." So that was your central heating.
Say original.
It is, yeah. Still got the paraffin in it. This part of the building here that we're at the frontage here, that was all redesigned in 1958, by Richard Maddox, who was the father of the Owen Maddox, the designer who did the Formula One cars. It was his father, who was obviously the builder, and he was nicknamed Whiskers because he had a huge beard and moustache and used to walk up and down, and they gave him a nickname. This is a wonderful feature now, as I said, it's quite unique in the way that it's been made, and is now as you know, it's Grade 2 listed, so hopefully it will last forever.
Shortly we'll be going upstairs, but one of the rooms, obviously, we're past as we go through, but it's too small for us all to go in. So as we go up the stairs, there is quite a significant picture at the foot of the stairs. That's a picture of Steve McQueen. He's picking up his Formula 2 car, and he's standing in this little entrance here, which is quite a magic photograph of him with John Cooper picking up his Formula 2 with his Land Rover. And when Steve McQueen came over, I expect you heard that he stayed at Michael's house, and he stayed in his bedroom. So that's quite a nice thing to happen. So have a look when we go upstairs. But obviously we'll tell you about John Cooper's office from down here, because we can't get you all in, but you're all welcome to have a look in as you walk up and take photographs.
We're so lucky to have Alvaro, who actually now owns this company, this is his building now, this whole garage. He's allowed us to use his office, and it once belonged, as you know, to John and Charles. But many famous people, when you go up there, have been in the office up there, and look at the wonderful photographs when you go up and have a look around the walls at all of those. This is where John Cooper and the Isigonis and that came up with the idea of the Monte Carlo car from outside. So there's some fantastic pictures upstairs, so we'll all make our way up there in a minute.
So John Cooper first met Isigonis at the Brighton Speed Trials in 47. And they became great friends. So at the time, John was already he was building Formula 3 cars or Formula Juniors with the BMC engine in it. So this had disc brakes, twin carburetors. So as Tony was just saying, this is where they got the idea for the Monte Carlo car. John Cooper used to go up to BMC to see the chairman, Harriman, and also Isigonis at the same time. But they had to get these cars homologated, which they had to build 1,000 to do that.
So that's where the idea came from for the Monte Carlo car, as Mike again was saying. So they homologated the cars, and then obviously they had to build 1,000 to get homologation. And obviously we know that they sold millions of cars, but what a feat again for for John Cooper. He shook hands with Harriman when he was doing the deal for £2 per car. So he didn't do too badly, did he? I think it was 150,000 Mini Coopers built, so yeah, not too bad a deal.
So we've just got to imagine that we're going into John's office. As I say, it's too small for us all to go in, but we can go in a few as we go upstairs. Now, one day John Cooper was on the phone to a guy called Briggs Cunningham. Now, he owned Le Mans team and many sports cars. Now, Briggs Cunningham was a guy from America, and he was having a chat with him on the phone, and his dad walked into the office and said, "John," and John went, Dad, be quiet, I'm on the phone to America." So Charles Cooper, he saw red. He said, "I'll give you bloody America," and pulled the phone out, called out the wall, and chucked the bloody phone out the window. And then John went, "But Dad, he phoned me."
Dear. Yeah, he was a character, that's for sure. He always used to tell us that story at Christmas when we'd had a few drinks, but it was always funny. It was always funny. The office was shared. After that, we will be going up to the drawing office, which is where all the designs of everything came from. It's a bit of a kitchen now, but there are drawings on the wall up there, so you can take a look at those of where it used to happen. Unfortunately, there's a football game and things like that upstairs as well, but you just have to go around and look at the pictures, but it's a bit very tight up there for space, so just go in single file round the tables and that, okay?
If you just hang on for a moment and wait for David, he would take you up there, and then Tony and myself follow up. But if you can imagine how many famous people were in that office, from Formula One drivers to car makers, all sorts of things went on within that office. You're all right, there's quite a few stairs. So. Before we go on, have we got anybody in this room called Bruce? Nobody called Bruce? No. Bruce McLaren was, once Jack had left to go on his own, Bruce McLaren was banned from this room. This was the drawing office where all these drawings.
Top secret.
Formula
One.
So this was the original drawing room. So they banned Bruce McLaren from coming up here in case he got ideas and decided to go on his own. And as we know, what he did.
This office was shared with two drawers they had, Owen Maddox and Eddie State. As you can see on the drawings here, there's some of them are signed by the actual guys that were the chief designers of the
Owen Maddox.
Owen Maddox, and that was Joe State. Both the things they designed for Coopers are all. Sorry, I've just lost my track. All the things they
Spider.
designed are on the. You can imagine though at some stage that in here would have been two massive drawing boards, one either side here, and they were there doing all their drawings for John, and then he'd come up here and probably walk out there. There's a funny story about John was walking past with Phil Hill, trying to give him an interview to say, well, this is what we build here, and you know, come and drive for me, sort of thing, Phil Hill. And they came up here, walked past there, and they were playing. Two of them were playing. His State was playing conkers with his mate, wasn't he? And he was just knocking away there, and then these two people walked. Phil Hill, John Cooper went out there and come back that way. And they were still playing with it. Playing with the conkers, and he never said a word, John, after that, even though he was trying to interview this guy. But sadly, he couldn't be here, Mr. State. He's not too well, but he was going to try and get here this weekend, but unfortunately he's not unable to make it. But that's basically the tour, isn't it, Chris, for today,
Yeah.
for up here. And be careful when you go down those stairs.
Just one thing, just to
Chris has got a final story for you.
just to think yourself today. I expect you've all come in minis or your tie-ups with minis. John Cooper in 1963 was racing to get home from Fair Oaks Airport in his 20 Mini. And he was going to dinner with the Roy Salvadorian Bruce McLaren that evening, and on the way back the rear suspension on the track rod end broke and somersaulted several times. It somersaulted several times John Cooper was very badly injured and split his head open here and cracked ribs, and he was unconscious for several days, which that's why he came down to Ferring to convalesce, and that's why me and Tony are where we are. But if he had died that day, which he was very close to, would BMW Mini have taken place? Would Rover Mini have taken place? You know, that was the start of the Mini Cooper at the time. History could have been changed on that fatal day.
Forever, yeah.
But luckily,
He
we're
survived.
all here today just to see, and we're very lucky with Alvaro allowing us to tour his premises. And I thank you all for joining our tour today.
Thank you very much, Joel. Thank you very much.